Hi everyone, welcome back to Will's Mountain Homestead. My name is Wendy, and today it's a very exciting day. I'm bringing you along with us and showing you how we make pizza sauce, tomato juice, and we're going to take the skins off of our tomatoes and we're going to dehydrate them and turn them into a powdered form. So this is about using the entire tomato. We're not having any waste. And if you do it this way, I promise you, you will not do it any other way, because you don't have to boil the water to blanch your tomatoes in to take the skins off. Your sauce is automatically thicker and it's just a better end product, and it saves you so much time. So stick with me, watch the whole thing through, and you will find 3 ways to use tomatoes with just one batch. So let's get started. You are going to need a roaster. We have an 18-quart roaster, and that's the size that we're going to use. Now I have the fresh ones already chopped up and in the roaster, and I have gone out to the garage and brought out my bag and a half of frozen tomatoes. See? They're hard. Place all of your tomatoes, your frozen tomatoes, in the roaster. My roaster holds 2 Walmart bags full of frozen tomatoes. Now when I make sauce, I use all the tomatoes I have. I use yellow, orange, red, Roma, beefsteak, whatever I have, I toss in there, and they are frozen. Okay, now I have the fresh ones on the bottom, and put it on your lowest temperature setting. Now mine isn't quite at 200. I turn the dial until the light comes on. And then in about 45 minutes, I'm going to give this a stir, and you're going to want to stir this probably every half hour to 45 minutes to make sure that none of the peels are sticking to the bottom of your roaster. As the tomatoes cook, you're seeing the juice come out, and it's at the top, and you can see how the skins are starting to pull back from the tomatoes. So they're still frozen in the middle, but they are starting to break down, and this is what you want. For this process, you are going to need a stock pot and a fine mesh strainer. So what you're going to do is just start straining the juice out of the tomatoes and putting it through that strainer. Anything that collects into here, we're going to dump right back into the roaster. This is giving us our tomato juice to can. And I use this a lot in barley soup and things like that. Whatever else you would use tomato juice for. But see how this strainer is collecting all of the seeds? You don't want to have seeds in your juice. So that's the purpose for that. So continue this until the water level has gone down in your roaster. We ended up with an entire pot of just the juice. So if I take you over here, you can see how much the level has dropped, and it's more of a sauce consistency now versus a very liquidy consistency. At this point, you want to take your juice over to your stove and turn it on a high heat, and you're going to bring this to a boil. For this recipe, we are using quart-sized jars, and to them we are going to be adding lemon juice. If you do not have lemon juice, you can substitute citric acid. And we are also going to be adding canning salt to this. Make sure you're using a salt that is non-iodized. If you are using lemon juice, you are going to put in 2 tablespoons of lemon juice before you add your tomato juice into the jar. I do 1 jar at a time. We are also going to be adding 1 teaspoon of the canning salt. And then we can fill our jars up to a 1/2 inch of headspace. And your jars should be hot because we are water bath canning these. We're not pressure canning this. And if you have a seed or two that end up in there, it's okay. Some of the seeds are relatively small when they go through the strainer. Same thing would happen if you were using a ricer. It's not the end of the world. And like I said, you're looking for that 1/2 inch headspace. We ended up with 3 quarts of tomato juice. So same principle applies with everything else. Wet paper towel, go around the top rim of each one. Get any debris off of the top. Clean lids. Ooh, these are hot. Finger tight. Your quarts are going to process for 40 minutes from a rolling boil. Okay, I know it seems like a long time, so you want to make sure that you have a good 2 to 3 inches of water over top of your quart size jars. My recipe is coming from this ball book, and if you are using citric acid for 1 quart, you're only going to use 1/2 teaspoon for it. Now, if you decide that you want to do your tomato juice in pints, you're going to either use 1/4 teaspoon of citric acid or 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And then when you're talking salt, it's going to be 1/2 teaspoon for a pint. Now, if you're processing pints, they're only going to cook for 35 minutes in the water bath. We are now at the point of getting ready to make our sauce. So what you're going to need is some type of a ricer. This is what I use because I find it's easier to clean than the other one and it's more efficient for myself, but use whatever you have that works. And once your peels collect inside of here, or when they spit out the end of the ricer, keep those in a separate bowl because we're going to use those later. And then all of your sauce will collect down into your big bowl, and we're looking to get 13 cups of sauce. Start feeding your ricer with the tomatoes. Now you will still have some of the liquid juice in there, but it's not going to be nearly as much as it would have been if we wouldn't have strained all of that off. And wear old clothes like I am, because you're probably going to wear some of this at least. If you're using this, this is your masher for inside, so stick this in the insert and then just go round in circles with it. And it will get all of the juice and everything out of the juice, the sauce, all the goodies out of these peels. And you're just going to be left with peels and seeds on the inside. See how that's just peel and seed, but you can still feel there's wet in there, so scrape that down. Mash it down in and go a second time. Now, every now and then you will have to take a spatula and scrape off the outside of the cone, and that's okay. But just continue this whole process until you're done with your tomatoes. Bring your sauce to a boil. We aren't there yet, but we want to bring this up to a boil over a medium to medium-high heat. Our sauce has reached the boiling point, and you can see how it's discoloring and bubbling up in here. So we'll just stir that in, and then to this, to make pizza sauce, we are going to add 1/2 cup of bottled lemon juice. And then I have a bowl with all my spices in it. So I have 2 teaspoons of dried oregano, 1 teaspoon of ground black pepper, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And guys, that's it. That's all there is to making pizza sauce. And let me tell you, this is probably better than any pizza sauce you will find on the shelf at the store. And it uses your tomatoes from your garden. So what we're going to do, we're just going to stir this all up, make sure it's mixed well, and then you're going to boil this at a hard boil for about 15 minutes. And then once this 15 minutes is up, you're going to remove it from the heat, and then we will ladle it into our jars. Once this reaches a boiling point, you want to stir this frequently so it does not burn to the bottom. And ours is boiling, as you can see. Maybe. Can you see that? See how it's boiling? So you want to just stir it frequently. This recipe calls for pint jars. So our jars are hot. They just came out of the water bath canner. And we're going to fill these to a 1/2 inch of headspace. Now, this recipe will make 4 pints. And it doesn't give conversions if you want to do half pints or quarts, just pints. So we're going to take these to a 1/2 inch of headspace, get all the bubbles out, wipe the rims down, and then we are going to process these for 35 minutes. Now make sure, again, you do your altitude adjustment on that if you need to, and start your timer then once it reaches a boiling point. So the recipe that I gave you, we doubled it, so I'm hoping to get 8 pints of this. I'm hoping. Oh, one of our tomato juices just popped. I don't know if you heard that or not. For the skins of the tomatoes, we're going to dehydrate these on our tray. So there's no fancy equipment needed other than just your dehydrator. And just spread these out as thinly as you can, because the thinner you can spread them out, the quicker it's going to dry for you. And we're going to do this between like 130 and 135, somewhere around there. And you want to dry this until it becomes brittle. Once it becomes brittle, then you can put it into a blender or a food processor and grind it up into a powder. So once this is finished, I will show you what that looks like. And usually one of these will make a little jar of it, and I typically use old pickle jars or spice jars or whatever to store this in. I use this a lot in my meatloaf, and if you need a quick paste, you can just take a couple tablespoons of this and just a little bit of water, and it will make a nice tomato paste for you. So basically this is it, and then once it's crispy, let it cool down and then turn it into a powder. This ended up being a really productive day. We ended up with 9 pints of pizza sauce. We ended up with 3 quarts of tomato juice. And then we got this jar of the skins that were dehydrated, the skins and seeds that we dehydrated and ground down into a powder. So pretty good for on the shelf for this week. So hopefully you enjoyed watching this and you learned how to make sauce, a very easy way to get more out of it than just one product. So thank you so much for watching and have a great day.